Hey, y'all. It's funny, those of you that are watching me here on YouTube, you see me swaying and dancing because I enjoy my intro music. Shout out to my husband that created that music for the Meaningful Work podcast, and welcome to this episode. So, we are in part two of a three-part series. So, if this is your first time experiencing me here in this podcast, whenever I teach a series, the way I teach one episode builds on the next because you've got to understand this content. Listen, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. How old am I, right? So I have over 96 hours more than that of content that I can always pour into you. But I'm not going to keep you here for 96 hours. So my goal is 30 minutes or less, really, or less, because I know you're busy, but I want you to be able to walk away with impact, with implementation, with insight, with things you can actually activate in your life now. So if you didn't go watch part one, I'm going to encourage you to do that. So, fulfillment formula, and really what I'm walking you through in these episodes is what I have studied in the last 20 plus years to understand what gives us meaning and fulfillment in our life and in our work. This is what the fulfillment formula is, the culmination of the study. So, I shared this with you during our last podcast. And by the way, first one, I did a lot of slides. Those of you that are here listening on wherever you listen to your podcasts, I'm always going to encourage you to come over to my YouTube channel, which is nrjnetwork.com. And I'm doing that because I share slides. I'm a teacher. So when I teach you, I'm going to put up a slide so you don't miss anything. And I'm getting ready to put up a slide right now. So the fulfillment formula is based on this Bible verse. Then God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion. And the rest of the Bible verse pretty much says to have dominion over everything. This is Genesis 1:28. So as you know, in part one, as we walk through the fulfillment formula, you see it there on the screen, D plus F equals M. You need both D and F to get to multiply or multiplication. And yes, that's what our third episode is about. So now we're at the F. We're at the F. Now, again, I want to remind you, I call it interchangeably the fulfillment formula, but as a little acronym, I call it the DFM formula, right? So obviously, we are at the F of the Dominion Fruitful Multiply, the DFM formula, which is fruitful. Now, before I get into the conversation here, listen, there's a concept that I teach my clients called be, do, have. Many of us focus on what do I need to do? What do I need to do because I want to have more meaning in my work? What do I need to do because I'm burned out? What do I need to do? But I'm going to tell you, God only shows up in your being. You need both revelation and methodology. I'm always going to give you methodology, but only God can give you revelation, and that comes in your being time. So I'm going to encourage you in between these episodes to do the work, to spend quiet contemplation time with God, and also to do the work. And so, in part one, I gave you a gift, my DFM formula book. And that's really to do the work so that you begin to define each of these three areas that equate the fulfillment formula for your own life, for your own career, for your own business, for your own work. Okay. So I'm digging deeper into the work here in the DFM formula. And let me tell you, as I'm teaching you the DFM formula, what I'm really walking you through is my brilliance framework. Now, I'm going to tell you where I got this brilliance framework from. There's two different things. Now, the reason I named it the brilliance framework, and I explained it to you in our first episode, but what I forgot to share with you is why I call it brilliance. Why do I say brilliance? Well, you're going to hear me say this Bible verse a lot. Matthew 5:16 that says, let your light so shine before men, I always like to say, and women, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. See, it's God's intention for you to glorify him in what you do. That's why he made us in his image. I remember that from episode one, right? The welcome episode of this podcast. And so as we let our light shine, the more we grow in our purpose, the brighter we should be, which is why I call it brilliance. I'm getting caught up on my own words. Listen, my goal is that I teach you everything possible that you are shining so bright that you need to hand somebody a pair of shades because they can't stand you because you're so bright. Yeah, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you know what I'm saying. So the more you get clear on all that I've given you in part one. Now, let me just remind you what dominion is. And again, you guys, I'm not going to dig deep into it. You need to do the work in our first episode to do that, okay? I'm not going to dig deep into it, okay? So in part one, we walk through passion and proficiency. That's what your dominion is. So I start getting excited, y'all, and I start getting tongue tied. So let me slow myself down. So your dominion is your passion and your proficiency. And this is what I want you to get. When those two places correlate, those two places are where your purpose lives. Now, let me tell you where I got these concepts from. Years ago, it's funny, we're going to have an episode or a guest on one of our upcoming episodes called this the Ikigai, Japanese Ikigai. Was just Japanese Ikigai. Do you guys know I didn't know how to say that? So when she said on the episode, I was like, oh, I've never heard of that. And then when I looked it up, I was like, oh, this is the stuff I studied back in 2016. Out myself. So this is a sample of the Japanese concept of Ikigai. You guys see that? So these are all the same pieces to the brain's framework. What I did was I simplified it. But let me say this to you. The whole purpose of and how you say it is Ikigai. I had to learn that phonetically, y'all. After that, my guest, Dr. Rachel, who's coming up in a couple weeks, you're going to hear her talk all about it. So Ikigai is a Japanese concept that combines the terms Iki, which means alive or life, Gai, which means benefit or worth. So when you combine all those things together, that gives you a meaningful life. So again, what I did was I took all the concepts I studied in Ikigai and I simplified it, and that became my brilliance framework, right? And that's what I'm walking you through in these episodes. Okay. So again, we walk through passion and proficiency. So now we're at problem. And I really want you guys to get this. When you look at the word fruitful, it means producing good or helpful results. It means to be productive. And what many people don't realize is you being fruitful is not for you. You being fruitful and producing good results is about every person that needs you. So again, I need you to get this. God didn't gift you for you. He gifted you to be a blessing to somebody that needs that gift inside of you. I'm sitting with that so you can hear that. Listen, this makes me think of what popped in my mind just now. Well, let me just ask you this first. What problem does your brilliance solve? What problem does your purpose, your passion, your proficiency, the things you're good at, the things that you love to do, what does it solve? I want you to get that whoever L'Oreal is, my favorite lipstick, I've tried Chanel, I've tried MAC, I've tried them all. L'Oreal, I always go back. Favorite drugstore lipstick, out of my own self. Love L'Oreal. But because she did what she did, if it was a she, because sometimes the name of the product is not the person that created it, but that's another conversation for another time. My point is this. God gifted her to be able to come together to create this product that I need, that I love, that makes me feel good every day when I get dressed and put on my red lip. Matter of fact, I have a girlfriend that has a red lip movement. God blessed Steve Jobs with technology. And I was reading an article and I didn't bring it in here. Shame on me. Steve Jobs was so meticulous in detail. He was into Japanese art as well. And it was the culmination of all those things that is how he created the first Apple computer. His detail and meticulous nature is what made every launch that Apple had while he was still living. It was the thing to watch when it would come out on social media or YouTube or on TV. It would be on YouTube though. This is before Facebook and all that stuff was popular. He was gifted. But I need you to understand your gift is not for you. So as I'm saying this, it's making me think of when I was little, just to give you another perspective. In my backyard, we had this lemon tree. And let me tell you something. My neighbors would come over, my friends would come over, my family would come over, all to come pick lemons off of our tree. And 9 times out of 10, when they would come pick the lemons wouldn't even be on the tree. They would be the lemons that had already fallen on the ground. Why am I sharing this with you? because the lemon doesn't grow lemons on the tree to keep the lemons for itself. The lemons, even as it drops, is saying, hey, take it. This is for you. The lemon is providing for others. It's not providing for itself. Y'all get that? In the same way, another piece that's interesting to that is if you don't grab a lemon, if you don't either pull it right, pick it while it's ripe, or grab it off the ground right when it falls when it's ripe, then it rots because that means it's unutilized. It can be produced, but if it doesn't get used, it rots. The same way with your gift. Listen, a couple years ago, I'll give you another example. I had actually this wasn't even a couple years ago. This is a couple months ago. I had hurt my back, and I went to the doctor. And the doctor said, "Oh, you're fine. You just pulled a muscle." So I said, "Okay, so should I just not try to work out anymore? Should I?" She said, "Mm-mm, you should definitely work out because if you don't use it, you will lose it." Same thing. I remember them telling my father-in-law right before his legs started going out. The doctor said, "You need to use and be walking around, or you're not going to be able to use your legs because they're not going to work for you, your muscles in your legs." What's the same thing, y'all, with our gifts? Use it or lose it. And when you use it, you're not using it to benefit you. Now, of course, God's greatest gift is that it comes back to us. That is that abundantly above all we could ask or think. But we've got to look at our perspective and how we're producing what we produce to benefit other people. Mhm. Let me put it to you this way. Let me see. Do I have this on the slide? I didn't put this on the slide. Or maybe I did. Yeah, I did. Let me just say this. Let me tell you. So what I call this section, so step 1 I called dominating your lane. Y'all remember that? So I call this section be the answer. You were born to be the answer. Those of you that have been following me for a while, you know that I used to do an event for entrepreneurs called Be the Answer because I was really teaching them more than marketing or messaging or sales strategy. You need all that too. But ultimately, you need to understand your why. You need to understand how you are the answer. Listen, on this picture I have on the screen, which I'm taking off now, is a doctor. When you go to the doctor's office, why do you go? You go to the doctor because other than going for a checkup, just like I told you, my back was hurting. You go because you're either hurting, you don't feel well, something is wrong, and you want to feel better. Well, in the same way, people are coming to you, they're looking to you. You are their prescription. And every day you hold out on being the answer that God created you to be in this world. You are holding up somebody's answer prayer. You're holding up somebody's life or business or career moving forward because you're not standing true and fully in the lane God created you to dwell in. You're not dominating in it. Because when you do, you should be producing good results. So as we talk about this, I want to give you perspective here, right? Now, I just said to you and read to you Matthew 5:16. Now, I'm going to tell you that there are so many Bible verses in Matthew that will bless you around this whole conversation. So you're going to hear me reference a lot of Matthew Bible verses here, right? So since we're talking about fruitful, here's a Bible verse I want to bring up here. Matthew 5, excuse me, not 5, Matthew 7, 16 to 20, that says, "You will know them by their fruit. Every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them." You know, one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Maya Angelou is, "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." See, your fruit is what gets produced by who you be and how you show up and the way you do what you do. But again, it's producing a result in this world. Is it having a positive impact or is it having a negative impact? Mm. So I really want you to really sit with that and think about that. So I'm going to give you 3 steps to ensure that you are producing a good and productive result, or profitable too, but we'll talk about profitable in the next episode. 3 steps to ensure you are producing good results or you're being helpful, that you're being the answer. All right. You ready for the 3 steps? All right. Step number 1 is you got to get in alignment. Now, I'm going to say this over and over, you guys. Your purpose, your passion, your proficiency is what makes your purpose. When those two are out of line, are not in alignment is what I should say. When your passion, your proficiency are not in alignment, then you're rolling around like I remember when another example, when I was little and I was driving down the street with my dad, and I remember this car rolling down the street kind of like sideways, like something was wrong. And I was like, Daddy, what's wrong with that car? And he said, Oh, their wheels are out of alignment. You guys know when your car is not aligned, then not only is your car running crazy like sideways, like you probably sitting sideways like this, it's not cool. It's your car out of alignment. But also you're causing additional wear and tear on your car that's not necessary if you would just do the work to get the car in alignment. Or for many of you, the reason why you hate your job, the reason why you are hating Mondays, the reason why you maybe are bored, I can go on and on, you're overwhelmed, you're frustrated, whatever that is you're feeling right now about your job that has you here with me now, is because maybe you're out of alignment. So again, I'm going to encourage you go back and look at part 1 of this series where and then do the work of the DFM formula book. I'm going to put it up here again. DFMformulabook.com is free. But in that book, I ask you questions so that you can get clear on your dominion. I'm going to walk you through part of fruitful, but there's more questions in the book that I walk through in these episodes because you really should sit with yourself. Listen, I remember when I started on the journey of doing this work back in 1993. I remember one self-help book I read, and I don't remember what the book was called, y'all. But I remember that book took me through a series of exercises. One of those exercises was to go and have a meal by myself. So I went on a lunch date, with myself, no problem, right? But then it said, now go to dinner. Like it knew I was gonna go to lunch, like it could see that I went to lunch. And don't take a book, don't take anything with you. Because when I went to lunch, I had my book with me. And I was like, oh, this is easy. Well, when I went to dinner, not only did I have to let go of all the people staring at me by myself, but I had to spend time with me. I realized back in 1993 I had never done that. Now I have so many meals by myself. I travel by myself. I do all kind of things by myself. Not that I don't enjoy other people's company. I do. But you've got to be willing to sit with yourself when you can spend time with just you and God. So he can begin to speak to your soul and show you parts of yourself that you never ever saw before. When I think about who I am right now, when I think of the career that I have, it's because I've listened to God as He has taken me through a matriculation process. And let me say this. And I wasn't going to say this, but I think I should. When you know your purpose, is oftentimes, well, let me just say this. Let me erase that. I often see that your purpose goes through a matriculation process, just like we go through an education matriculation process. You don't start at kindergarten and then go to 12th grade. You have a matriculation of things to learn so that you can go through elementary and middle school and then high school and some on to college. But there are a series of things you've got to learn before you can successfully go through the next step. Well, I've learned my purpose. Our purpose is the same way. So even if you think you know your purpose, go do the work in part 1. If I use myself an example, I started and you heard me tell this story. I think it was in our last episode when I worked in TV and film that I was doing production and casting. What do I do now? Production and casting. I realized what God was doing was expanding my territory like he did with the prayer, like he did for Jabez. And when Jabez prayed, Lord, please expand my territory. Jabez was saying, Lord, I want to do more for you. Show me how I can do more. That was Jabez saying, I want to produce more result for you. We'll talk about increase next time. But let me focus here, all right? So step 1 is getting in alignment. You've got to get in alignment so that your passion and your proficiency, those two together equal your purpose, also align with your values. By the way, I'm going to have a guest that's going to talk about values in the episode to come. So I'm not going to drill into that. But I want you to get this. When something feels off, it's because it is. And if it feels off, that means you're out of alignment. Which moves us to step 2. What's the point? What's the point in you doing what you do? What's the point? It's like who is benefiting from what you're doing? Because again, it's not all about you. It's not. So every company you work for was created as an answer. Every single business, unless you're a drug dealer, because that ain't an answer. But then that is not producing a good result either. Right? Healthcare companies. My trainer who is helping me snatch my sexy back. Come on, somebody, right? Because this menopause train is no joke, y'all. He's blessing my life because he's teaching me a new and different way to look at eating and exercise. I'm doing exercise I ain't never done in my whole entire life, but that's the point. That's not the point. Let me give you another better example. One of my favorite characters in the Bible, Esther. So I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version of Esther. If you want to read the whole story, go look at Esther, the whole book. But most of what I'm going to talk about, well, my favorite verse is 4:14. For such a time as this. Many of you don't realize that everything you've gone through, when I look at entertainment and every job I've had since then and all the things that God has taken me through, it has been for such a time as this. So Esther. So Esther was a Jew and her parents, she was an orphan. Her parents died. And so she went to live with her uncle. Some versions say uncle, some versions say cousin, Mordecai. And he became her caregiver. Mordecai worked in the palace and he overheard the king was looking for a new queen. Now listen, I'm not going to talk about the king's previous queen. That's a whole nother story. Don't have time for that. But here's the thing I want you to get. Mordecai said, ooh, Esther needs to run for that. But here's the problem. Esther was a Jew. A Jew can never become queen. So what Mordecai did was he changed Esther's name. So her original name was Hadassah. Might be saying it wrong. He changed it to Esther. So to make a long story short, Esther ran for queen, kind of like an episode of The Bachelor. Bachelorettes were flown in, brought on camels from all over the world to audition to be the queen. So Esther won. So now Esther's queen, right? She has all the lavish robes. She has people feeding her and bathing her. She is living the life. But she overhears the king's right-hand man talking about a plot that he has to kill all the Jews. What Haman doesn't know, and that's the king's right-hand man, is that Esther is a Jew. Oh, excuse me. Let me back up. I said that incorrectly. Mordecai overhears Haman with a plot to kill all the Jews. And so what Mordecai does is he goes to Esther and says, and by the way, this was popped in my spirit to share with y'all, so I wasn't ready. So let me pull up Esther, see if I find this Bible verse real quick. So Mordecai says to Esther, you've got to do something. You have got to do something, because if you don't, what will happen to all of us? Okay, instead of me trying to talk and find it in my Bible, why did I find it on my phone, y'all? So now you can tell these episodes of our films live. Hold on, I'm going to pull this up on my phone real quick. Pull it up on my phone. Bear with me. Esther. Hey, where did she go? I was going to say I just saw her. Okay, so he went far and so hold on, y'all. I'm looking for it. Uh-oh, why can't I find it? Sorry, y'all. Anyway. Okay. So here's what Mordecai says to Esther. Do not, and this is chapter 4, verse 13. Do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet, who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So here's the thing that I think is so interesting about Esther's story. God knew the exact way he was going to use Esther and allowed her to become queen. Just like God knew the exact way he was going to use you. There's a reason why Esther stood out from all the other women, because he knew that she could stand in the gap. The same way I told y'all the story of Moses last time, that Moses, who was raised in a palace, could stand in the gap for his people now. But was it going to be easy? No, because Esther could die. Her husband could find out she's a Jew and kill her too. So what she says back to Mordecai is, go gather all the Jews who are present and fast for me, neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. This is verse 16, by the way. And my maids and I will fast likewise. And so I will go to the king, which is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. She realized that her coming into the kingdom was for such a time as this. Just like every lemon that falls from the tree is for my lemonade, all the things I make my lemons with, my good salmon with my lemons, all the things. Just like you are here with a specific arena to tend to and keep, an area to dominate in that blesses all the people that need you. Which moves us to step number 3, which is you must yield high quality. Now, listen, you must yield high quality is step 3. So, step 1 is getting alignment. Step 2 is what's the point? Understand who needs you and why you're doing it. And number 3, you must yield high quality. I said this the last episode. You're Bentley, like Maddie Moss Clark. If you guys saw the Clark Sister movie, one of my favorite movies. Well, let me tell you, I love just about every movie. I'm a movie person. It's my undergraduate degree is TV and film. Maddie Mars Clark, one of my favorite quotes from that movie. She said, we don't do easy in this house. We do excellent. We don't do easy in this house. We do excellent. Because you want everything to be world class. I always tell my team, I want everything we do to be world class. I want people to feel like it's high quality. I told my stepdaughter we were shopping for dresses for prom. I said, baby, let me explain to you. I look like I spent 5,000. My goal is always to spend 50 because I wanted to yield high quality. In the same way, when you look at your purpose and your passion and your proficiency and how you're serving people, when you're serving people and you're dominating in your lane, you're producing good results, listen, it should yield high quality. Thinking back to some of the examples I gave you, William Wilberforce in episode number 1, our welcome episode, how he stood in the gap and got 800,000 slaves freed. Come on, somebody. Or how about Moses or Esther or Sully, the captain I talked about that in I think it was 2009. I was it 19? Might have been 2019. I don't have those notes in front of me. Whose the plane was going to crash at JFK. Y'all remember that? I talked about this last episode. But because he studied his craft, he knew his pilot ship. That's probably not a word, but he knew his exact lane. He knew it well. He knew exactly what to do in that moment. The very thing they're trained for. You've got to be willing to not try to cut corners and get the easy way out. And I want to hook up. No. I need you to understand a Billy never goes on sale. So there is no hookup, there's no discount. Many of you, you are sitting in a mediocre career because you know it's been time to move, but you're being lazy, complacent. Yes, you could be making 6 figures and still be being complacent. Or maybe fear has you stuck there because you're afraid you can't make that money in another place. Why are you limiting God's ability to bless you? See, when you're frustrated or bored or burnt out, you're not yielding a great quality in your work because you're not fully present. Y'all get that? So you've got to consider what is keeping you there. Listen, got to share a Bible verse too for you here. Now, you guys know that I've shared Matthew 5:16 a couple times, which is to let your light shine. So I'm going to encourage you to actually read Matthew 5:13 through 16. I'm going to read just Matthew 13 here because it makes sense for what I'm talking about. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? Is it then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men? Now, listen. If I look this up in my Tony Evans study Bible, which I did, I'm about to read it to you what it says, what Tony Evans says here, it's so good, okay? About you are the salt of the earth. Before the advent of refrigeration, people used salt to preserve food. Salting down a piece of meat slowed the decaying process. Notice that Jesus didn't tell them you are the salt of the shaker. Come on, somebody. For salt to lose its taste is to lose its uniqueness. For salt to lose its taste is to lose its uniqueness. So I need you to understand God created you to be salt. That's that Bentley. A Bentley is unique, special, different from all the other cars that are out there. I remember I was talking to a woman who was telling me about all these things that she saw other people doing out in social media. And she was like, I should do it just like so and so. And I was like, well, if you can do it so just like so and so, Why would there need to be a second version of that person? That means that one of you is not necessary. And if those results are already being produced, why do we need a second set? Now, yes, there's going to be somebody that does what you do out there. I get that. I'm not saying that. But you shouldn't be a copycat version of somebody else. God created you unique, special. Listen, I talked about this last time that you are a masterpiece. The thing that I love about even Esther's story, I'm going to read you a Bible verse about masterpiece in a minute, is when Esther was up against the fact that she could die. You know what she did? She threw a dinner party. She threw a dinner party and invited her husband, and then she didn't feel like in that moment she should ask him, so then she threw another dinner party. Then she didn't feel like she should do it again, so she threw another one. High quality. She wasn't rushing the process. You try to get this. So listen, as we talk about you being a masterpiece, I think I read this last time. I can't remember. I may have. Psalms 139, 13 through 14. For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. I need you to understand that when God created you the way He created you, it was so that you could bless the people that He knew would and somehow be connected to you. Listen, here we go. Tony Evans again. We are not here by chance. David affirms that God had not only created him, but he had actually knit him together in his mother's womb. You too are a work of art that God put together by hand. You have been remarkably and wonderfully made, no matter the circumstances surrounding your conception, no matter your ethnicity or gender, your existence is intentional. You are not a mistake. So if you're not a mistake, stop doing that stuff half done. Do things like you are the royalty that you are. Hello, I talked about that episode one as well. So here's a bonus to this conversation. Our bonus is it takes commitment to grow fruit. You know, what's interesting is my lemon tree in that backyard, there would be seasons where sometimes the lemons would be rot and awful. But we will water it and water it and water it. If we did not water that lemon tree, it would never grow lemons. And some of you, there are areas in your giftedness that you are overlooking, that you aren't taking the time to grow and really spend the time to develop. So that is my invitation here. It's for you to get the DFM formula book. Again, that's dfmformulabook.com. It's free, y'all, so it's not like I'm selling you anything. But I created that book so that I could give you the questions you need to ponder so that you could be clear, not only on the lane, but how you are the answer that people are looking for in this world. All right. So that's it for part two. Again, DFM formula, the fulfillment formula, which is DFM, Dominion, and Fruitful. We got one more left. So do the work, and I'll see you for our next part three. All right. Listen, by the way, if these episodes are blessing you, can I ask you to do me a favor? Again, I don't ask you to do this to grow my followers, but I do ask you to do it because somebody in your reach may need this very content. All right. I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all.